Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is another amazing episode of your favorite podcast, the world famous Keeping It Rio. And this is episode 148. I'm getting closer to that 150 mark and definitely excited for my guest I've got today. Very special. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Taylor Proctor. Taylor, welcome to Keeping It Rio. How are you doing today?
So good. And thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor and delight to be here.
I can certainly appreciate that. And I'm thankful for you to be here. I think we're going to have ourselves a wonderful conversation. So let's just jump right in. What do you say? Taylor, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a business coach. I have a proprietary method that I have used for several years, working with brands like Google to scale international departments, working with enterprise startups in industries like tech, manufacturing, education, and media to get multi-million-dollar valuations, and have worked with even small business owners to achieve those consistent 10K months. And I've done that all through my proprietary method called IMOVE, which stands for intuition, marketing, operations, velocity, and execution. And I have found that wherever anybody is in their business, if we can apply the IMOVE methodology, we can get them to scale quickly, easily, and without burning out. So I love to work with clients that have the vision for how their business can really change the world or change the world for their clients. And they have the thrill and the thriving for those extra commas in their bank account, but they tend to get stalled up on the actual execution and how to do it, which is where the iMove method comes in.
Outstanding. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun because I want to learn more about the iMove movement and I want to learn about how to scale a business. I have a small business myself, a roofing company here in San Antonio. I don't know if I want to scale it to be super big. There's a whole story behind the roofing company. I actually just bought it back from my previous business partners a couple weeks ago. We bought this
Congratulations.
company. Well, it's a long and winding story. We bought this company. It was out of business in 2019. I
Mm.
moved to San Antonio. I'd never been here before a day in my life. We decided we'd buy this roofing company that was shut down and rebrand it, rebuild it. We did all that stuff. Everything was awesome. About 4 years in, I hit the proverbial wall and I started to like really burn out because I was traveling so much. I had multiple locations across the state. Got to the point where I completely just and
Mm.
back at the end of February, we decided to kind of put it on hold for a little while. And I was able to go down to Florida, do a little bit of fun things for the summer, get myself back in. And now we literally just restarted a couple of days ago. And I just signed my first roof deal yesterday for the new company. So super excited about that. But I'm sure there's a lot that I can apply from your methods as well that can help me in the future. So let's talk a little bit about that. Number
Sure.
one, to get into a coaching, consulting type role, you have to have, a little bit of previous experience in what you're going to be coaching on. So tell us a little
You
bit
would hope
about your,
so.
well, not everybody, trust me, I'm in roofing. And that's one of the big things is the fake gurus and things like that pop up over here, but I can tell that you're legit. So tell me a little bit about what got you into that, where you decided, hey, I want to help other people. I want to show them what I've learned along the way. How did you learn this along the way to, develop your program?
Sure. Well, like you, I have a winding path that actually started in radio, funny enough.
Oh,
And
nice.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I worked for a radio conglomerate that did traffic producing. So if you've ever been in your car and on the radio, like on the nines, they do the traffic reports where it's slow and go, there's an accident, all that kind of stuff. I worked for the company that distributed that, and I was an on air talent and producer. And in the mix of all of that, having it be here in Salt Lake, it shifted to a hub and spoke model. So I had the opportunity to be one of two people that they kept on to move to Los Angeles. And while I was in LA working a split shift and because it's drive times, right? So had to be super early in the morning. I was doing traffic for Portland and for Salt Lake and
Wow.
had 6 hours in between and then driving home in LA traffic. So a 3 hour ordeal to get home. I really started to burn out and I wasn't making great money. And so it was really like choosing between gas and food. So not great. And came to them and said, hey, I can't do this anymore. I've got to go back to, because it was in LA, I've got to go back to Utah where I have a support base and cost of living is significantly less. I'm gonna go. And they're like, no, we'd love to have you still. You can work from home. So I moved back to Utah, started working from home. And that 6 hours in between, when you're not spending it driving, is like twiddling your
What do I
fingers.
do? Yeah.
Yeah, what am I going to do here? And so I started exploring entrepreneurship, started exploring like what's something I want to do that I can have fun with, that will challenge me, that I can grow into, it'll be something I like and enjoy. And so I actually became one of 3 of the foremost wedding planners in a small town, a destination town in Utah called St. George. So I had a wedding planning business for 2 years there. And that's really where I got the bug for entrepreneurship. And
That is
very successful.
tremendous.
Yeah, it was awesome and very successful, was featured in numerous national magazines, working with destination brides to have their destination weddings in St. George. It was fantastic. But I started to really miss the support base of my family who was in Salt Lake. So after about 3 years, decided to move back up to Salt Lake and hit that proverbial, like, what do you do now? Because having a wedding planning business, I imagine similar to roofing, right? It's location and regional based.
For
So
sure.
you can't just take it online, right? You have to like figure out whole new vendors and whole new relationships and all of that. And I really looked closely and realized that my favorite things about being a wedding planner had to do with marketing my business and working with multiple vendors. So pretty much operations. So I got a job as a copywriter at a local agency. And from there, my corporate career, if you will, really took off. I moved from a copywriter to a content manager to an SEO and content manager to assistant director to director to senior director, and eventually all the way up to VP of marketing for a company out of Las Vegas. And in the middle of that, I've worked with brands like Google, like Stanford University, Johnson & Johnson, and multiple others that are internationally renowned. And I really loved it. But I also had this, I'm going to say, little problem. I had a temper. and right? And my husband had a phrase, hell hath no fury like Taylor mildly inconvenienced.
I love it.
I just raging temper. And I realized that all I wanted in life, like my career was successful, but I could start to see it was pumping the brakes a little bit because nobody liked working with me because I was angry and irritable all the time. And so I had to take a look at my life and I realized that I wanted to be happier. So I started down the personal development journey, which I think all entrepreneurs in one way, shape, or form or another, like we all have, our businesses grow as much as we're willing to grow as people, right? So I started looking at how I could be happier and developing habits and techniques to help me get there. And after several years, I kind of looked back and went, oh, I don't lose my temper and I am really happy and like it's worked. And at that point, I realized that there's probably other people in the world who struggled the same way I had. And really, like we were there. I was on the corporate ladder and I'm hitting every single thing on the societal checklist for happiness, right? Like going to school, check. Have a great job, check. Have a great spouse, check. Go up promotions, check. Lead a team, check. Like all of those things were there and I had still been unhappy. And so I built the happiness habits in place to do that. Realized that probably other people needed the same kind of help. And I started working with clients on their transformational happiness journeys. Well, after 2 years of doing that and being extremely successful, there was one common thing that came up with every single one of my clients.
What's that?
Keep in mind, I'm running in tandem, corporate job and this on the side. And the thing that everybody had in common was after a time working together, they'd be like, this was amazing. I feel so much better. My life in all of these areas is happier. Now I just need to figure out how I can grow my business. And I'm like, I have a whole secret life, right? This corporate career that is doing just that. And right around this time, I had, right as this was like all coming together, I had started a job at a company where they literally said, we have a new department. We need somebody to run it. Here's the keys. And so I took a company or my department in 3 years from 0 employees to 30, from 1 service to 5, from 1 language to 5, from 1 client to, I think we ended up at about 5 or 6. And I spent 6 months living in Edinburgh, Scotland, setting up our EMEA European team. And now we have dual locations internationally. So, and the way I was able to do that was I treated my department like it was my own business, because I had the entrepreneurship background in wedding planning and things like that. So was able to rapidly scale it at this massive level by treating it like it's my own business. So when my clients for happiness came to me and were like, man, if I could just figure out how to do marketing or how to get the operations in place or how to execute more easily, I was like, I have this whole other skill set that we haven't even tapped into. And so I started to make a shift in my business to become, instead of a transformational happiness mentor, there is that focus on the life skills and the habits, but really, how do we help your business grow and develop? And in that, it's been about 2 years now, it'll be 2 years in March. I decided it was time to step away from the corporate world and move full time into my own business. And it has been such an amazing and incredible roller coaster since, but it really has been focused on helping entrepreneurs, no matter their level, get good at business. Because I think we've all kind of been there where it's like, if I could just get good at business, I could get back into why I got into business in the first place. Right? We get into
Yes.
business for the freedom, for the transformation, to help our clients, to whatever it is. We get into business for a certain reason, and then as it becomes a business, it's like, oh crap! Like I just need to get good at this, and we kind of lose the heart of why we got into it. So when we can get good at it, we can come back to the heart of it and really take it to those next levels. So that's the long rambling story of how I got here, but it's just been this huge journey of all the way from broadcast communications and radio to wedding planning to 15 years in corporate marketing, operations, leadership, strategy, to now helping business owners be able to utilize all of that expertise and truly grow and get good at business.
Well, I absolutely love that. This is going to be so much fun because I think you just gave me about 20 different questions that I can ask now. So the thing that really just struck me out of what you said really impacted me was what's most important at this point is happiness.
Mm,
And I think that that really hits home to me because earlier this year I kind of felt that, and it was like, man, I no matter what you do, I go around and I help people all over the country, and I enjoy what I do, and people look up to me and people call for advice. But you get that feeling sometimes where it's like, man, this isn't really like super fulfilling to me. I
yeah.
felt like this is what I wanted to do. And, I can't seem to figure it out. Um, I think that's the most important aspect of life that most people seem to realize later in life. While we're young, we're just trying to do what we do. And, I could tell you stories about living in North Carolina for 3 years, and I don't remember any of it because all I did was wake up and go to work and go home and go to work and go home. And I don't remember 3 years of my life because I was just constantly building something that I thought was what I wanted. And I walked in one day and just realized, you know what? I hate this. And I walked away from it. And it's funny you say about temper because I maybe have a little bit of something like that going on myself.
I feel like
Um,
we're kind of kindred spirits.
for sure, there is no doubt about it. We've definitely gone down the same road there. Um, I love what you said too about, hey, people didn't want to work with me because I was not likable and I was always in a bad mood. And you acknowledge the fact, right? Kudos to you because most people will never accept the fact that they've got something that they need to work on. And a lot of people get offended if someone says something like, hey, maybe you should work on that a little bit. Let's talk about that realization. Okay. You come to the realization of, I need to calm down a little bit. I piss people off and they don't want to work with me. And maybe I'm a little frustrated. When you realize that about yourself, it's very difficult sometimes to have those kind of conversations. Tell me a little bit about that. Okay. You have to admit the fact that you're not perfect and that there's something to work on. How does that process go through you in your mind as far as accepting this and then saying, okay, here's what I need to do, and then ultimately figuring out how to change your life for the better?
Yeah. So there was a couple instances that happened. And I wish that I could say it was a one and done and I changed my life, but part of I call it like the blanket of anger. Like anger covers all other emotions.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I was raised where it was like anger was acceptable. Crying was not, anger was acceptable. So like any emotions like shame, sadness, anxiety, any of that, I would just put anger over the top and plow through. Like it was a shield. It was going to protect me. It just covered everything else. And so I didn't really realize that. And I had several instances, like I mentioned, that came up. One was my husband had known me in high school, and he had said a couple of times, "Where did you go? You used to be so happy, and now you're angry all the time." Which, oh, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, it's your fault.
I was going to say there's a common denominator, but okay.
Right. And so like I didn't want to hear it because I'd rather be angry. And I built a habit of anger. And I think that's an important thing. Habits for your emotions are huge. And so I had a habit of anger. So like I didn't really hear him say that the first 2 or 3 times. Now that in conjunction with, I had some, I'm going to say very near misses. I had about 3. And the last one was like the worst. But I had some very near misses of like road rage, which is so interesting because even in those instances, minus the last one, like I had just said something under my breath and I was the only one in the car, but I don't know if the other person saw my face, read my lips, heard me if my window was down. And like I had people, pedestrians walking across the street, come and bang on my windows. I had a guy who didn't stop at a stoplight or stop sign, and I said something again to myself in my car, and he had driven past and stopped and backed up to even up with my window, right?
Nice.
So it was like a couple of scary little things like that. But then I had one where I was driving and it was in a parking lot, and there was like a primo spot, front row, and a car was pulling out. And so I was prepared to turn, had my signal on indicating I would take that spot. I waited for that person to come out. And I swear to you, it was just like the movies.
Mm-hmm.
They back out, another car zoop right in. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh, well, it's just a parking spot.
Yeah, but in the moment, that's fighting words. I got you. Okay.
Oh, yeah. At the time, I lost it. I'm blaring on my horn. I am cussing up a storm. I am flipping them off. I mean, the works. And the way it was set up was I was in the row, and there was the row of parking, and at the front was a little outcrop for like the main parking, like parking lot street, right? So
Yep.
up and then main parking lot street, and then it actually wrapped around for another main parking lot street. So it was like the end of the parking lot. And so I went around this car all the way, right? So from behind to the side to the front, and I am just blaring on my horn and giving them the bird. And just, I mean, the whole time I go around them, like they know that they pissed me off. So I have to go all the way back to the end of the parking lot, back to that main area, and I'm at the very, very end. And I'm paying attention, and they haven't even gotten out of their car. And I'm like, you parked there? You're not even going to do anything?
Yeah, right.
So,
You should already be done shopping at this point.
yes. So
I got you.
I pull over, or not pull over, I pull into spot. I get out of my car and I start walking towards the store. They back out of the spot, drive past me, unroll their window and say, I hope you're happy now.
Yep. Okay.
I don't drink soda, and I have never more in my life wish I had a 7-Up, like a 7-Eleven big gulp, so I could throw it in that open window. Like I just seething. And as they drove off and I walked past my empty parking spot I'd been waiting for, I go into the store, and all of a sudden I just start shaking, right? The adrenaline, the anger is kind of gone now. And I'm like, that could have gone so bad. Like, what if they'd had a gun in their car?
Yeah.
What if they were in a huge SUV and I was walking down the main area? They could have ran me over, right? It could have been so many things. And I started to feel the anger slip away, and the shame, and the guilt of like, who am I? What kind of person loses their mind over a parking spot? Like, I just really started to feel all those other emotions, and I realized that something had to change. And that, in conjunction with, in that moment, I also realized that my husband had been hinting he wouldn't be able to stay married to me if I didn't change. And so as everything in the store just literally like an emotional tidal wave just swirled around me, like I couldn't even see what was in front of me. I was just so overcome with all of these, I'm going to say, negative emotions, that I realized something had to change, and I did not want my life to be like this. And so
Wow.
I started really evaluating like what needs to change, what needs to happen. And there was three things. The first is that I realized my main trigger point was when I was driving. Everybody else on the road are idiots.
You're really hitting a nerve right here with me. And it's like, uh-oh, I'm having self-reflection time as we talk, because
Everybody
I'm
on the roads are
equally guilty. Yes. I said that the other day. I think I made a Facebook post. Everybody in San Antonio should only be allowed to drive from like 8 to noon, and they should get the heck out of my way after that, because I'm the only one here that knows what's going on, and I know where I'm supposed to be. So I get that. Okay. Road rage is a real thing for sure. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, because it's their fault. It's not our fault.
Well, and that was the thing, is I started to realize that every time I drove, I immediately was pushing it off to someone else. Right. And it would be someone would speed by and cut me off, and I'd be like, that jerk, blah, 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 blah. Down to they wouldn't even use their signal. And I'm like, where did you learn how to drive? Like, I'm one of those people who avidly uses my signal. So I found that when I drove, that's when I became my worst. And so one of the things I really practiced was making up stories about other people, because I was already doing that. I was already making up a story about how they're a total jerk. That's a nice way to put it. And I realized like I had to start making up these other stories. So I would start offering grace. And if somebody sped past me and cut me off, I'd be like, you know what? They're on their way to the hospital. Their wife's having a baby. Somebody didn't use their signal or did something else, driving so slow in the fast lane, right? And not pulling over. I would be like, they're just not paying attention, because right now they're really trying to focus because they've got a whole bunch of other things going on. They want to be safe. Like, I would just make up these stories that put these people in a positive light. And what I found is when I could give other people grace, it allowed permission for me to, when I didn't allow other people grace, there was an expectation they wouldn't allow it to me. So I had to be perfect. Right. And that never works. And so then I'd get angry to hide my imperfections, and it would just be this vicious cycle. So when I was able to start giving grace to other people, it actually allowed me to start giving grace to myself. And that was the very first like touch point within this. The second thing is once I was able to kind of give myself a little bit of grace, I was allowing myself to have even more introspection. And within that, I realized that one of the things that was my biggest hang up was that I believed happiness was inherent. I believed that everybody's naturally happy. And so with me being so angry, there must be something wrong with me. And I mentioned I used anger as a blanket. So when you believe there's something wrong with you, there's shame, there's sadness, there's anxiety, there's all these other emotions that I was unwilling to see or feel. I would just be angry instead. So when I realized that I believed happiness was inherent, I started doing a lot of research, and I realized that in fact, it's not inherent. It can be a learned skill. Now, I'm the type of person, I think all of us, if we're entrepreneurs, have this mentality. I can learn to do anything.
Yep.
So I was like, I can learn to be happy. I can learn to build that into place. Happiness is not an inherent thing. It's a learned skill, and I can learn that skill, which brought me to the third thing, which I realized that happiness can be a learned skill based on habits. There are certain habits you can do every day and throughout your weeks and throughout your months and throughout your life to help you maintain and feel happy most of the time. Now, as humans, we live on a scale. 50% of what we're going to feel is going to be what we would deem as a quote unquote negative emotion. But for many of us, and for how I was, is we live on the negative side and we just kind of blip over to the positive when something positive happens. So, oh, I got engaged, blip over, come back to the negative. Had a kid, blip over, come back to the negative. Now, the times you come back to the negative may be a little bit longer depending on the event, but eventually you kind of come back to living in this negative-esque space. Through building the happiness habits and tools, I was able to shift that. Life still happens, but I spend most of my time living in this more positive range with occasional blips down to the negative. I'm able to feel through those, experience it, and use my habits to pop back up to the positive and live there. So it was the combination of those three things that really allowed me to start to shift and evolve. But it really started with some pretty traumatic events that were all my own fault. And also that introspection, starting with like, if I can give other people grace, I can give myself grace, then I can understand that happiness isn't inherent, it's a learned skill. And therefore, I can put in place the happiness habits to be on the happiness side of the spectrum much more frequently.
Wow, that is awesome. Like you literally taught yourself how to be happy, and I need to learn how to do that because I'm still, I spend a lot of time over here on the negative as well. And I really appreciate that outlook because, it's I tell people this, everything in life is just really just taking action and doing what you need to do to get better. And most of us are content to kind of fly a little bit below the radar or not ever really hit our potential because it's easy and it's comfortable. But when you take the time and you really look yourself in the mirror and say, what is going on here? Like, this isn't what I want to be. It's not to say that it's not normal or it's weird or whatever, but this isn't who I want to be. And then to actually formulate the steps and then take them, that is super impressive. So let
Thank
me
you.
ask you about that process now. You've identified the situation. You realize, hey, things are not going to get better unless I get better, and you're willing to take the time and put in the work. What kind of habits do you develop at this point to help yourself? I love what you just said, making up stories about people in the car, and I'm going to start doing that. Like that's pretty awesome, really. And I can see how that could certainly change your perspective immediately. And you hit upon, we spend the majority of our time in the negative. So getting back over into the positive through habits, what kind of things did you start doing early on? And then, as you've continued to evolve, what has evolved with you as far as the habits that you do on a daily basis to keep yourself in that mindset that you need to be in to be your best?
Sure. So I not only do these, this is what I had trained my clients to do as well. And I will say, so anybody that would work with me during that time, we would do an assessment. And in that assessment, it would be like a scale of 1 to 10. And most people came to me on the 2 or the 3 range. And by the time we'd finished working together, they'd be 7s, 8s, and 9s. And it's so funny because nobody wants to fully admit they're a 10. You're like, you don't want to admit that like you're happy, but you're like, I'm way happier than I was. And I'm in the 7s, 8s, and 9s range. So I want to preface with that because even now, several years later, I'm in contact with several of my clients and they'll occasionally check in with me or I'll check in with them and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm an 8 today. I've been at a 7 or an 8 for all week, for all month, for all year. Like they've made these habits help you maintain it. And I think that's an important thing, right? It's habits. It's meant for maintenance and for maintaining longevity. So that being said, I taught myself these things, and then I also taught my clients these things, and they are so helpful. So the first you already pinpointed, which was a decision on who you want to be. Massive, right? So I recommend something called declarations. They're also called mantras, affirmations, whatever you want to call them. I call them declarations. And declarations are positive I am statements that represent who you want to be. And I'd love to share another driving example. So I had started to do this affirmation for myself. And it was that I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. I'm Taylor Proctor. I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And I would say this to
Nice.
myself all the time. Well, one day I was out driving. And this is after years and years of like practicing in these good habits, but I always had like, I want to be vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And I was at a light. I was stopped. The light turned green. I started to go forward, and the person behind me rear-ended me.
Oh,
Yeah. And I got to tell you, my template is and always will be anger. To do a lot of work to not have that be my foundational template and a lot of habit building to make that kind of the last resort instead of the first resort. But in certain moments, that comes back up. So my first thoughts are, I'm pissed, right? Like, were you not paying attention? Were you on your phone? Like, I was going through the light and you rear-ended me. Like, we were both stopped at the same time. Like, what the hell? Like, and I can feel myself getting angry, and I can feel it in my chest, like starting to just tighten up and kind of puff up. And I can hear it in my inner monologue, that like bitty, just sharp, like, what the hell's wrong with you type of mindset and verbal internal dialogue and tone. Well, I can start to feel myself get that way. And through years of practice, I'm like, oh, okay, we're coming on it. So who do I want to be in this moment? I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light as I'm pulling over. I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. Now, that doesn't mean suddenly I come out and everything's sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, but it allows me to remember who I want to be so I can neutralize the emotions.
Yep.
And just come out calm. Because I guarantee if I'd come out, and I'll continue the story, and she behaved the way she behaved, it would have escalated way hardcore if I hadn't had my little declaration. So I get out of the car. I'm vibrant, abundant, filled with light. Vibrant, abundant, filled with light. I get out of the car. She gets out of the car. And I said, are you okay? Yeah. I'm like, chick, you ran into me. Like,
yeah, like it was your fault. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm vibrant, abundant, filled with light. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm okay too. Is your car okay? Yeah. All right, let me look at my car. My car seems fine. My car's fine, your car's fine. I'm okay, you're okay. Like, I'm okay to really just call this and just have us go on our way. Sounds great. Gets in the car and leaves. And I'm like, I am being a good person here, and this is your fault.
Right.
Right. But I am vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. Vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And I guarantee something that would have totally became an altercation, because I already told you how I had my temper before, right? This chick was pushing all my buttons, and I'm like, no, I am vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And just that remembrance of who I want to be doesn't mean I have to show up that way every time, but I can't be this anger, bitter, sarcastic jerk if I believe I am vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And so it allowed me to neutralize. So that's the first thing that I always like to do is build a declaration of who you want to be. And I do this with my business all the time, right? My current one is I am wealthy, healthy, and successful. I help thousands of others achieve the same, right? That is like my business one. That is my identity. I have, and I am continuing to adopt. So I always recommend having a declaration that identifies who you want to be, how you want to feel, because then you can tap into that in those moments where you're kind of have the opportunity to fall back into your old self. So that's number one. Number two is emotional clearing. So I look at, and I have a visual aid.
All right.
Look at your body like a container, right? And that container gets filled up every day with the emotions and the stories that you have. Now, every circumstance is neutral. So I teach what's called CLEAR method. Every circumstance is neutral. Circumstance is the C. The language that we use, there's our L, immediately applies a meaning to the circumstance, taking it off of neutral, and the language then invokes your emotions. As a human, that feels almost instantaneous, right? Circumstance happens, you apply language, which applies meaning, which generates the emotions you feel. Now, as much as we would like to say that we are logical beings, we act on emotion. The emotions then lead to our actions, which lead to the results in our lives. So one way to change language, use a declaration. But also your emotions build up, and the stories, the language of the stories builds up with it. So what happens is we have all these emotions in our container. Well, we can trash compact that down as much as possible, but eventually the container can only hold so much. Hence, when you have massive blowups, whether it's crying or screaming, right, there's always a big upheaval that comes that's a big emotional release because our container is overflowing. So what I recommend doing, and what I've done and what my clients have done, is be able to take those stories and emotionally clear this out. So for 5 minutes a day, At the top of a piece of paper, you write, I am feeling blank, put in whatever word you want here, angry, dissatisfied, frustrated, irritated, anxious, sad, whatever you want. I am feeling blank because ... And for 5 minutes, you do bullet points of the stories of why you feel that way. Right? So let's say, for example, I use the anxious. I'm feeling anxious because maybe I'm talking too much on this podcast. That's story one, right? I am feeling anxious because I have an animal that is sick right now, and the vet's only given him a year to live. And that's heartbreaking. And I'm anxious about how I'm going to handle it. Next bullet point, I'm feeling anxious because, right? And you kind of get the gist. And you do that and you clear out all those stories, because the brain, if we ask, why are you feeling anxious? It's going to give you one answer, and you typically accept that and you're done. But we have built up an entire container full of these emotions. So we've got to take them out and clear the stories. So when you do that, what you're doing is you're getting it up out of your container, out of your body, out on paper, which naturally organizes it from the chaos in your mind, and then away. So you take the sheet of paper and you rip it up and you throw it away. And that level of clarity every day, 5 minutes to start, massive changes. Massive, because you're identifying why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You're getting it up, out, and then you rip it up and throw it away. Now, there is one rule to this. I have to be very clear. You never tell anybody what you put on your paper, because the last thing you want is, hey, I wrote on my paper today, honey, that I'm angry because you didn't do the dishes. Right? That's not the point of it. It's not to recycle the emotion. It's to get it up, out, and away. So you don't need to tell anybody what you wrote on that paper. You're getting it up, out, and away. Now, the third thing that I like to do, so just recap, right? Declarations, emotional clearing. The third thing is daily success tracking. And I do this with business owners too, right? Like all of these apply to getting good at business as well, right? Because you have to identify who you are, where you want to go, what you want your business to be. Right? You have to clear out all the emotional clutter that is keeping you, and beliefs that is keeping you stuck. And you've got to be able to celebrate the wins. So the third and final thing is tracking a daily success. With my clients, what I would do is I'd say, text me every day, text me a daily success. And some days it'd be like, I brushed my teeth today. And that's 100% acceptable. And it'd be so funny because we'd work together for about 10 weeks. And at the first, it would always be like 11:55. I'd get a text. Today's win was that I ate breakfast. Okay, great, right? And throughout the time, eventually, I'd be like, you can text me anytime. It's just got to be within a 24-hour period of your wins. So it started out being like a real struggle and like last minute, last thought. And it slowly evolved to, by about week 5, that I would start to get texts in the middle of the day or like in the morning. Oh my gosh, I had this win today. I had this win today. And then in our weekly appointment, they'd be like, can I send you more than one? Absolutely. So then I'd get texts all day long of, I had this happen that was a success. I did this that was a success. I did this that was a success. I landed this client. I was awesome in this sales call. I did this amazing post and I was able to respond to everybody. I got my inbox emails to 0, right? Whatever it is, but they would start to find wins all day, every day. And that is a huge confidence boost to continue the habit of looking for areas you're successful. And we're humans. We like to feel successful. It makes us feel happier in our lives. So when we can track our wins, we gain momentum that we didn't know we were gaining. And so within that, when you're knowing who you are, what you want to, who you are, where you want to be, who you want to be, when you are clearing out the negative emotions and making space for the positive, and you are paying attention to the positive, all of those 3 habits, in addition to others, but those are my core 3, right? Those 3 habits transform your life to being happier.
Absolutely, they do. And I love that so much. Like that, I practice a lot of what you just said, not in the same exact forms, but I'm a firm believer, 1% better today than you were yesterday. And over the course of a year, over the course of a couple years, I always carry this picture with me on my phone. And it was 3 years ago. And Taylor, 3 years ago, my face was like 3 times the size of what it is now. Like I was extremely overweight and was just like, not really. I don't know what the deal was. I moved here to San Antonio. I didn't know anybody. I started off on fire and I lost like 40 pounds and then I gained like 60, right?
Mm.
And I'll never forget that I was really getting down on myself and I was thinking, boy, like, you don't, this isn't me. And the biggest thing that ever happened was I got an invitation to be a speaker at a conference and we had to do the little pictures, that show your face on it. And it's like, Chuck's going to be a speaker. And I looked at that picture and I couldn't believe that it was me because it was like, oh, wow, like I don't look like that. But I did look like that. And I was blaming the cameraman, you got the wrong angle and this and that. And it's like, dude, you're fat from all angles. Like you just have to deal with it, bud. And that day I said, okay, I've got to do something. So I know that it's not likely for someone who, I used to work out all the time. I'd go to the gym 6, 7 days a week in my 20s and early 30s. I had a very physical career at that point. So I was in good shape.
Active.
But when you stop doing that for a while, you have to get back into the swing. It's like, okay, most people will do their New Year's resolution, and it's like, I'm going to get in good shape, but I'm going to start on January 1st. I'm not going to start today, because I need to still be me for a couple more weeks. But on January 1st, I swear I'm going to start and I'm going to become a completely different person. They jump in 100 miles an hour and last a day or two because it's too much.
Yeah.
For me, I decided I was going to take a different approach this time. And I said, I'm just going to start walking and I'm going to walk every single night. I'm going to get my AirPods on. I'm going to listen to music or I'm going to listen to a podcast or whatever. And I'm just going to walk around my neighborhood. And I came with this route where it was exactly 3 miles from my driveway all the way back to my driveway. Nice. So I do it in 3-mile increments and I'm all over the place. And I started noticing, I feel better. My knees don't hurt. My pants are like starting to get loose. I actually went down 10 pant sizes over the course of 3 years, which is insane to me, but I wasn't really super aware of it, except in the moment I had this huge pile of clothes that I had to give away. But it was just, okay, I would get to the point where if I didn't do it, I would feel bad about myself. And I love what you just said. One of these days, I always remember this. It was a turning point for me, was maybe about 6 months into the journey that I had created for myself. I was doing a deal where I told myself I was going to do 3 miles a day every single day for this entire month. And it was June 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, 2021. And I got to one of the last days of the month and I just didn't feel like doing it. And I was willing to accept this fact for the majority of the day. I accepted it. Like, I'm not going to make the 30 days because I just don't feel like it. And well, it's raining out and it's in College Station, Texas. And that's it rains hard in College Station, Texas for some reason, but it was 11:38 p.m. on a Saturday. And I just remember I was sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, man, you did all this work. You're like, it's like the 28th or 29th day of the month. You've got 2 or 3 to go, bro. Like, why would you quit now? So I literally forced myself to get up. I did a 3-mile run in a torrential downpour. And in that moment, I told myself, this is a changing moment in your life, because why did you just decide to get up and go for a run in a torrential downpour? Because you were going to be disappointed in yourself. And that was the first time in my life where I ever actually thought, how I feel about myself is important. I've always 100%. Tried to help everybody else and please everybody. And I've been the proverbial doormat that's, had feet wiped on me for years. And in that moment, I started to change and I realized, wow, okay, I can do this. And now it's like, it's just a constant thing for me. I go every day. If I don't, I feel terrible. But being able to accept that fact and say, hey, look, I need to change it. Here are what the habits are. I do wake up every morning and I think of 5 things that I'm grateful for. Sometimes it's just, I'm grateful that I woke up today. Other days there are tremendous things, but I think that's a wonderful way of changing your perspective in life. And then you going out and helping other people who, quite frankly, are pretty much in the same boat that I find myself in. That's why this conversation's so fascinating to me, because you're talking directly to me. So let's say that I now figure out, okay, I'm going to make myself happy. Taylor's going to help me out. We're doing this. And by the way, Taylor, I have a business and I'm looking for someone that can help me scale my business. Okay. And this is where ultimately we were trying to go with the conversation. I got into the previous stuff a little bit there because it was fascinating, but let's talk about your current situation. Okay. You're now helping people scale their businesses. Like you said, it's not really, you don't have a set demographic. You help all kinds of different people, different sizes of organizations. Tell me a little bit about that process and what you do, how you keep up. I guess number one, this is maybe a question that might be too personal. Maybe you don't want to answer. How many people do you currently work with in your business that you're helping on any given day?
Give me 1 second to count. 24.
20. You counted to 24 fast. I like that. That's pretty good.
I have a mastermind, and so I have 16 people in there, and then I have several one-on-ones after that.
Outstanding. So what does that program look like? Let's say that you get someone, similar to myself. I'll just use me as the example because I know me.
Sure.
I have a business. I understand roofing. I've been doing this for 25 years, but I'm just another roofing company. Everything, everybody in San Antonio is competitive. It's all price driven. It's a commodity. Like nobody really looks at the roofer and says, can't wait till you come over to my house because I'm just another bill, right? And
Right.
when they need you is when there's a disaster. They don't call you until there's water pouring in. So I want to differentiate myself. I want to grow my business. I want to expand. How can you help me do that?
Yeah. So I think we could talk about programs, right? But I think it's more important to talk about how the IMOVE method would help you differentiate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is I think as business owners, we've all taken advice from a guru and had it fall flat on its face, right? Like, oh, market this way and you'll get all the leads that you need. And then you're like, cool, I'm going to do that step by step by step. And I followed through to the letter and crickets. And then what happens is I'm very big on the mindset because it ties into the happiness stuff, right? We start to feel like, well, what's wrong with us? Maybe I'm not meant to do this. Like it worked for them. Why didn't it work for me? And that's why the intuition is the first part of the IMOVE method, is because when you take incongruent action, it leads to no results, which we've all seen at some point. And so it's like, how do you take aligned and congruent action? That's by following your intuition. That's by knowing what makes sense for you. That's all the way from like setting things up in a way where you don't have to burn out in your business. So I'm going to share an example. I actually was working with a client yesterday, and she's like, I'm actually really afraid to market for my business because I don't want to have so much work that I can't handle it and I get burnt out. And I'm like, who says you have to say yes to everyone?
Thank you.
Right? And that's an intuition piece, like a mindset piece, is this like, you can market your business. And let's say you have space for 20 clients. Awesome. You have space for 20 clients. You market your business. And I said, by the time the 20 comes up and you've hand selected who those 20 are, right? But you had 40 leads come in and they're all want to work with you, have a wait list. Now you've got business throughout the year instead of just this month, but also you could recommend them to someone else in your industry and have them pay you a referral commission. It's win-win for them, win-win for you, win-win for the colleague. And all of that is to be aligned with, I don't want to feel super burnt out and overwhelmed. So we can move into the marketing because now we've found a solution to prevent you from not market that's been preventing you from marketing. We found a solution to help you continue to market, make money in different ways, and still feel comfortable with the growth of your business. Right?
I like it.
Everything has to start with intuition and that mindset piece first. That helps you take massive marketing action, which then needs to be supported by operations, right? Scalable operations. How do you take your business and differentiate it? Well, we need to figure out who you are and what makes you different and how that can be applied into a marketing message that's aligned and congruent so the energy matches and people are like, this feels great, right? Because it's you. And then also now you have a team. How do we operationalize that so that same customer service, that same vibe, that same result can be scaled across all of your different areas, all of your team members? Then we put in place strategies, which is to provide velocity. That's the V, right? We put into place strategies to help support that so you don't burn out. To support the operational strategies, the marketing strategies, and the continuation of, I'm going to say, habitual strategies of tapping into your intuition first, right? So we're working forwards and backwards. Then from there, once we have all of that, we can execute with ease and become the leaders that we need to be for our businesses and for ourselves. So the IMOVE method goes across all of those to help determine where you need the help. So if you're saying, look, I need to differentiate myself in my marketing, I would start by saying, cool, let's identify who you really are and what feels like a 10, right? What feels incredible to you versus I'm doing it because I think I should. You're going to have to use and expend the same amount of energy anyways. I'm going to share another story. So one of the services that I offer is called a Quantum Power Day. And in that, now that I think about it, it's 28. I didn't count Quantum Power Days. I was counting one-on-one.
Hey, there you go. You're more successful than you thought you were 5 minutes ago. I love it.
Love it. Would you count that as a win for the day? So tracking that success. So I have a service called Quantum Power Days, which is a VIP day where we get shit done in your business. I do not believe in coaching where it's you did a 6-hour coaching day and we did all these belief breakthroughs, which we can totally do, right? But then you left with more homework than you came with. No, we want to get all the things in your business done that have been on your mind and on your list for 3 months or more that you're like, I just don't know how to do it, or I'm afraid of the success and you're procrastinating, whatever it is. We get all of those listed out and we take 6 hours and we knock them out of the park, right? And by the end of the day, you're absolutely exhausted, but in the best, most like, I got it done way, versus exhausted and being like, I have nowhere to go next and I don't know what to do because I'm just burnt out because mentally we hurdled all these hurdles, right? It's like, let's clear the beliefs so that we can get to the thing, get it done, and move on to the next so that you can quantum leap your business forward. In that, the intuition piece comes into play. So I had a client that we were building everything out kind of from scratch. She's like, I want to go full bore in my business and I need to figure out my ideal client. I need to figure out my pricing strategy. I need to figure out my products. I need to figure out my marketing. I need to figure out all of these pieces. So in 6 hours, we're knocking it out of the park. And one of the things she said she wanted to do was build a course. Now, as I've been working with her, we've been building all this stuff out. And then I'm like, okay, well, the next thing on the agenda is that you want to build out a course. And everything about her demeanor changes, right? She gets a little concave and she's like, yeah, I know I really should do a course. I think a course would be great, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, I do these Quantum Power Days all the time. And I've had multiple clients, we build out their course, right? We build out their landing page copy. We build out their marketing. We build out the modules. We build out the resources for the modules. We build out the script. We build it all out. I'm like, it is not a problem to create a course. However, I need to ask you, like, and you need to know, building a course is not, I build it, they will come. You have to market it and build it with the same amount of energy you would anything else. So what does building a course feel like to you on a scale of 1 to 10? She was like a 2, because it was a should. That falls into that, like, do this and you'll be successful. And it's a misaligned action. So I was like, great, let's put that on the back burner. I'm not saying we can't ever do a course, but let's put it on the back burner for a second. If we were to do something that lit you up, like, what do you enjoy doing that you'd be happy to sell and happy to market and like just be so excited about? She goes, honestly, I love working one-on-one and I love doing like retreats. I'm like, boom, let's build out your retreat model. How's that feel? That's a 10. Awesome. So we built out a whole retreat model, which is insane because it's like, get 10 people there and she can do very specialized, individualized work for a group of 10 people and make a $20,000 profit. And she's making a difference and loving it and is excited to sell it. And she's making money. That's how we want business to be, right? It's not a burnout factor if you're doing the things that light you up. And if we look at the operations, of course, there's always things that we have to do that we don't want to do, but operationally, we can set that up for success. So that's the O of the IMOVE. So it was like, by tapping into her intuition and what's actually congruent to her, we were able to set her up to do a retreat instead of a course. And she actually just had her retreat like 3 weeks ago. And sold it out, $20,000 profit, and is hosting another retreat in January. And she's
Nice.
selling them out, and she's excited to market it, and she's excited to talk about it because it wasn't from a should context. So all of that to say, I really like to look at the intuition and what's congruent to you first, to then build out marketing messages and materials and things that can differentiate you, because we're actually working with you, not with a template. And then build out the operations to support that massive growth in marketing, to then provide strategies so you don't burn out, you're still congruent with who you are, and that you can execute with ease.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, like, this has been one of the best hours I've had in a long time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. We're getting close to the 1 hour time limit here. So I always like to end with this very special question.
Yes.
People are watching the show. I do have a lot of people that are not roofers. I go way out of my way to have other people like yourself on my show so that it's not like just a bunch of roofing type stuff. Someone's watching the show, you've triggered something inside them. They recognize, this is someone who could help me with getting my business to the next step, someone that I'd like to be able to text my daily wins to, whatever the reason may be. How do people follow you? How do people get a hold of you if they'd like to pursue maybe working with you at some point in the future? Is that something that you're open to? Number one, definitely don't give your information out if you don't want to work with any of them. But if someone is interested and they say, hey, Taylor, I enjoyed you on Keeping It Rio. That was awesome. I would like to see if you can help me out. What are the best ways to go about making that happen?
Yeah. So if you look up Get Good at Business on almost any social platform, I have that handle. Also, you can go to getgoodatbusiness.com or taylorproctor.com, goes to the same website, to find me and reach out. What I would love to do is have a discovery call if you are intrigued and feel aligned to work with me, so that we can find the best fit. Like I mentioned, I have a mastermind, which I believe getting good at business should be accessible. And quick. So I believe in that, where my mastermind is 5 hours a month dedicated to trainings, networking, and hot seat Q&A, so you can actually execute and spend time in your business and on your business than just learning. And then also, I believe that it should be accessible. So it's $27 in the first month to get your feet wet, and $50 a month after that. So that's usually the first place I like to direct people, but I would love to have a discovery call to see if that's an alignment, or something like a quantum power day or working one-on-one would be a good fit. And you can do all of that by going to taylorproctor.com and or getgoodatbusiness.com. Another thing, if you're looking for free resources that is still me helping and supporting, I do have my own podcast called Get Good at Business as well.
And I will be subscribing to that immediately, because I have enjoyed this so much. I can't thank you enough. I do want to thank one other entity before we call it a day here, and that is my sponsor, which is roofer.com. And I want to tell you a little bit about roofer.com, Taylor, because I love this company. Basically, this is a group of individuals who were professional roofers, and they decided that there were so many things that we do during the course of any given day that waste a ton of time. Like, old school roofing is a beautiful thing where you can go out, you can draw a diagram of a roof on a piece of graph paper. You can take a tape measure and you can measure everything up and all these geographic shapes, and you do all kinds of cool math. And, we learned all this stuff in the 3rd grade, and that's basically what we would do. But it takes a lot of time to do that, right? So my buddies over at Roofer, they came up with a all-in-one inclusive program that basically takes you from the initial contact with your client. They can either hit a QR code, go to your website, whatever avenue you choose, and they can get an instant estimate on their roof. Literally within 30 seconds, you can have a ballpark idea what it would cost to replace your roof, with many different types of materials. So you can kind of look at it, hone down your decision a little bit, tell the nice man at the other end of the internet that you'd like this one. We put you together a comprehensive proposal, send it over. Basically, the entire process is now to the point where it's a la carte. You can go through, you can click on different upgrades that you'd like to do on your roof. The roofer report actually measures the roof for you from an aerial satellite, measures everything down. So you've got a full report. You've got all your information. It takes you through their CRM program, which literally from inception to the final invoice covers everything in roofing. And anybody that watches Keeping It Rio knows I love Roofer. now you also know how much I love Roofer. So thank you to Roofer for everything they do for me. We're getting ready to embark upon our 2nd year of sponsorship of Keepin' It Rio. So I appreciate that sincerely. And again, Taylor, thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it. This has been cool. I'm going to reach out to you at some point. We're going to have another episode because there's still a few things I'd like to discuss with you. And I really think we had a great connection today. So thank you for that. Everybody that watches, you know the deal. Share, like, subscribe, do all that cool stuff. And until next time, the corny tagline that we end this with every time is keep on keeping it real.